The Lost Colony That Vanished. Part 1. The Settlement That Disappeared. Imagine arriving on an island where an entire community once lived, but now there is nothing. No people, no signs of struggles, no bodies, and no clear explanation. Just silence, and a single mysterious word carved into a wooden post. This is the chilling mystery of the Lost Colony of Roanoke colony disappearance. It began in the late 1500s, when England was eager to expand its presence in the New World. At the time, powerful nations like Spain were already building colonies across the Americas. England wanted to do the same, so to claim land, establish settlements, and grow its influence. So in 1587, a group of about 115 English settlers crossed the Atlantic Ocean and arrived at a small island off the coast of what is now the North Carolina. The island was called Roanoke Island. The settlers weren't soldiers or explorers. Many were ordinary families hoping to start a new life. Among them were men, women, and children. They planned to build homes, grow food, and create England's first permanent colony in North America. Leading the group was the colony's governor, John White. White was not only a leader, but also an artist and explorer who had visited the region before. He believed Roanoke Island could become a thriving English settlement. At first, things seemed promising. Soon after the settlers arrived, an important event took place. The governor's daughter gave birth to a baby girl. Her name was Virginia Dare. She became the first English child born in the Americas, a symbol of hope for the colony's future. But life in the New World was not easy. The settlers struggled to find enough food. Supplies was limited. Relations with nearby Native American tribes were tense. The colony depended heavily on help from England to survive. Realizing this, the settlers made a difficult decision. Governor John White would sail back to England to gather more supplies and return as quickly as possible. At the time, no one knew that this simple plan would lead to some of the greatest mysteries in American history. White left the colony later at the same year, promising the settlers he would return soon with ships full of supplies. But history had other plans. Just as White arrived in England, war broke out between England and Spain. The conflict, part of the larger struggle involving the famous Spanish Armada, forced the English government to focus all ships and resources on defense. For 3 long years, White was unable to return to Roanoke. 3 years. Imagine waiting on a remote island far from home with limited supplies, not knowing when or if help would arrive. Finally, in 1590, White managed to secure passage back to the colony. After crossing the Atlantic once again, his ship approached Roanoke Island. White must have been filled with relief. Soon he would see the settlers again. He would see his daughter, his granddaughter, the daughter he had left behind. But when he stepped onto the island, something was terribly wrong. The colony was empty. No people, no signs of a battle, no bodies. The houses had been dismantled. The entire settlement had vanished. But before White could understand what had happened, he noticed something carved into a wooden post. A single word. CROATOAN. What did it mean? Where had the settlers gone? And how could an entire colony simply disappear without leaving a trace? In the next part of the story, we'll explore the mysterious clues left behind and the terrifying possibilities of what might have happened to the lost colony. Part 2. The Strange Clues Left Behind. When John White stepped onto Roanoke Island in 1590, he expected to hear the sounds of a living settlement, voices, two striking wood, children playing. Instead, he only found silence. The colony he had left behind 3 years earlier had completely vanished. The houses that once stood there were no longer intact. Instead of burned ruins or broken structures, the building had been carefully dismantled. It looks as if the settlers themselves had taken them apart, piece by piece. This detail immediately raised an important question. If the colony had been attacked, the houses likely would have been destroyed violently, but the careful removal of the buildings suggested something very different. It looked like the settlers had planned to leave. But where did they go? As Whitehead and his crew searched the abandoned settlement, they noticed something carved into a wooden post. One word: CROATOAN. Nearby, the same word was carved into a tree. This was not a random message. The settlers had actually discussed this possibility before White left for England. If the colony ever had to move to a new location, they were supposed to leave a sign telling him where they had gone. But there was another important detail. White had asked the settlers to carve a cross symbol alongside any message if they were living under danger or force. There was no cross. This suggested that the settlers had moved voluntarily, not because they were being attacked. The word CROATOAN referred to a nearby island known today as the Hatteras Island. At the time, it was home to a Native American tribe known as the CROATOAN people. The CROATOAN tribe had previously been friendly with English explorers. In fact, some earlier expeditions had formed alliance with them. Because of this, White began to believe the settlers might have relocated there for safety. It seemed like the most logical explanation. The colony may have struggled with food and supplies during the years White was gone. Moving closer to a friendly tribe could have helped them survive. But here's where the mystery deepens. White said desperately wanted to sail to Hatteras Island to search for missing settlers. If they had truly moved there, he might finally reunite with his daughter and granddaughter. But fate intervened once again. A powerful storm began forming along the coast. The weather became too dangerous for ships to travel safely. White's crew refused to continue the search. Reluctantly, the expedition was forced to abandon the mission. They sailed back across the Atlantic, leaving the mystery behind. That moment would haunt John White for the rest of his life. He never saw the settlers again. He never learned what happened to his daughter. And the fate of the colony, known today as the Roanoke Colony Disappearance, remained a mystery that historians are still trying to solve more than 400 years ago. But the clues didn't stop there. Over the years, explorers and researchers began searching the surrounding regions for any evidence of the missing settlers. And what they discovered would only make the story even more mysterious. Because in the next part of this story, we'll explore the strange discoveries that suggest colonists may have survived, but not in the way anyone expected. Part 3. The clue that suggests the colonists survived. After a mysterious disappearance of the settlers from Roanoke Island, the story of the Roanoke Colony Disappearance didn't simply fade away. In fact, the mystery only deepened as years passed and new clues began to surface. At first, there were only questions. Where had the settlers gone? Had they moved to Hatteras Island to live with the CROATOAN tribe, as the carved word suggested? Or had something far darker happened during the 3 years that John White was gone? For many years, No one knew. But decades later, English explorers began hearing strange stories from Native American tribes in the region. Some tribes claimed that their ancestors had encountered people who looked like Europeans, people with lighter skin, different clothing, and unusual tools. According to these accounts, these individuals had been living among the local tribes long after the Roanoke colony disappeared. One of the most intriguing reports came from the English explorer John Lawson in the early 1700s. Lawson traveled through parts of what is now North Carolina and documented his observations of Native American communities. During his travels, he recorded something unusual. Some members of the certain tribes claimed they had ancestors who were white. Lawson even wrote that he met people with gray or light-colored eyes, which were rare among Native American populations at the time. This detail immediately sparked speculation. Could these individuals be the descendants of the missing Roanoke settlers? Another clue appeared in the form of European-style objects found among Native American groups in the region. Archaeologists later discovered two metal items and artifacts that seemed to come from English settlements of the late 1500s. Some historians believed the settlers may have split into smaller groups after leaving Roanoke. Instead of staying together as a colony, they might have joined different tribes across the region in order to survive. If that happened, the colonies may have slowly blended into Native American societies, adopting their customs, learning their languages, and eventually become parts of those communities. Over generations, their English identity could have faded away entirely, but no, not everyone agrees with this theory. Some historians argue that the evidence is too weak to prove the settlers truly survived. Artifacts can travel through trade, and stories passed down over centuries can change over time. Still, the possibility remains fascinating. Imagine an entire English colony quietly merging into another culture, disappearing not through strategy, but through transformation. The settlers might not have vanished at all. They may have simply become something else. Yet, even this explanation leaves many questions unanswered. If settlers joined local tribes, why didn't later English colonists encounter clear evidence of them? Why were there no written records, no surviving documents, no confirmed settlements? And what about the original message carved into the tree? CROATOAN. Was it truly a clue pointing towards their new home? Or was it the final trace left behind by people who knew they might have never been found again? In the next part of the story, we'll explore the darker possibility behind the Roanoke colony disappearance, including the chilling theories that suggested the settlers may have faced something far more dangerous than isolation. Part 4. The darker theories. As historians continue investigating the mysterious fate of the settlers from Roanoke Island, not everyone believed the colonists had peacefully joined nearby tribes. Some researchers began considering a far darker possibility. What if the colony didn't relocate voluntarily at all? What if something terrible happened during the 3 years that John White was trapped in England? To understand this theory, we have to look at the situation settlers faced in the late 1500s. Life in the New World was incredibly difficult. The colony depended heavily on supplies from England. When White left in 1587, the settlers already struggled with food shortages and limited resources. If those problems continued for 3 years, survival would have been extremely challenging. Desperation can push people to make dangerous choices. One theory suggests the settlers attempted to relocate inland in search of for better farmland or more reliable food sources. If they traveled deeper into the wilderness, they may have encountered unfamiliar tribes who were not friendly toward English settlers. Tension between Europeans and Native American groups were already rising at the time. Earlier English expeditions had damaged relationships with several tribes in the region. Because of this, some historians believe the colonists may have been attacked after leaving their original settlement. Another theory involves a powerful Native American leader known as Chief Powhatan. Powhatan controlled a large confederation of tribes in the region that later became Virginia. Some early English reports suggested that Powhatan may have destroyed a small group of European settlers who were living among rival tribes. A later English colonist named William Strachey even wrote accounts claiming Powhatan admitted to attacking and killing colonists who have tried to live with enemy tribes. Some historians wonder if these victims might have been members of the missing Roanoke colony. But this theory also has problems. If the settlers were attacked, why was Roanoke settlement itself left so orderly? The houses had been carefully dismantled. There were no signs of battle or destruction. It still looked like the colonists had left willingly. Another frightening possibility is that the settlers simply couldn't survive the harsh condition. Without enough food, supplies, or with outside help, starvation and disease could have slowly taken their toll. The colonists may have attempted to move to a new location only to face overwhelming hardships along the way. The wilderness of coastal North Carolina was unfamiliar and unforgiving. Dense forests, dangerous storms, and unfamiliar terrain would have made travel extremely difficult for families with children. Over time, the group could have scattered or perished without leaving trace behind. Still, one detail continues to haunt the historian. If something tragic had happened, why did the settlers carve CROATOAN as their only message? Why not leave a longer explanation? Why not leave multiple signs showing their direction? That single word remains the most important clue in the entire mystery of Roanoke Colony disappearance. And in the next part of the story, we'll explore the fascinating discovery that modern archaeologists have uncovered. Clues that may finally reveal where the lost colonists truly went. Part 5. The Archaeologist's Clues. For centuries, the mystery of the Roanoke colony disappearance remained one of the most puzzling stories in the early American history. Historians debate theory, explorers searched the region, and generations wondered what truly happened to the settlers of Roanoke Island. But in recent decades, archaeologists have begun uncovering clues that may finally bring us closer to the truth. Modern researchers started by carefully studying the one clear message left behind, the word CROATOAN. As John White already suspected in 1590, this word referred to an island not far from the original settlement, known today as Hatteras Island. This island was home to the CROATOAN people, a Native American tribe that has previously maintained friendly relations with the English explorers. Because of this connection, archaeologists began focusing their search there, and eventually they discovered something surprising. Excavations on Hatteras Island uncovered several artifacts that appeared to be of English origin. Among them were pieces of pottery, metal tools, and parts of weapons that dated back to the late 1500s, the same period where the Roanoke settlers vanished. These items were unusual because they were found within Native American villages sites rather than English settlements. This discovery led many historians to reconsider the possibility that the colonists had joined the Croatan people. Instead of trying to survive alone, the settlers may have integrated it into the local community. They could have learned new survival skills, adopted native customs, and slowly blended into the tribe over time. But that wasn't the only clue. Researchers studying an old map drawn by John White himself discovered something fascinating hidden beneath one of the map's patches. Under the paper layer, there appeared to be markings suggesting the location of a possible secondary English settlement inland. This location is known today as Site X, near the area of modern-day North Carolina. When archaeologists began investigating this area, they found fragments of English ceramics and other items from the late 16th century. This raised another possibility. Perhaps the colonists didn't move to one place. Instead, they might have divided into smaller groups. Some could have traveled inland, while others may have joined the Croatan tribe along the coast. Splitting up might have increased their chances of survival during difficult times. If that's true, the lost colony didn't vanish overnight. Instead, it may have slowly dissolved, its people scattering across the region and becoming parts of the different communities. But even with these discoveries, the mystery is far from solved. Archaeological evidence can suggest possibility, but it rarely provides absolute answers, and artifacts found so far are small fragments of a much larger story. We still don't know exactly how the settlers lived after leaving Roanoke Island. We don't know how many survived, and we don't know whether any of them ever tried to return to their original colony. Yet each new discovery brings historians one step closer to understanding the truth behind the Roanoke colony disappearance. But the biggest question still remains. Did the settlers truly survive, or did their story end somewhere in the wilderness? In the next part, we'll explore how modern technology and new research methods are helping scientists search for answers to a mystery that had lasted for more than 400 years. Part 6. Modern Investigations and New Possibilities. Even after more than 4 centuries, the mystery of Roanoke colony disappearance continues to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and researchers around the world. What had happened to the settlers who vanished from Roanoke Island? Did they survive? Did they move to somewhere else? Or did their story end in tragedy? Today, modern technology is helping investigators search for answers in ways that were impossible for earlier generations. Archaeologists now use tools like ground-penetrating radar, satellite mapping, and advanced dating techniques to examine areas where the colonists might have traveled. Instead of digging randomly, researchers can scan the ground and detect hidden structures or buried artifacts beneath the surface. One of the most important areas of investigation remains Hatteras Island, because the word CROATOAN were carved at the abandoned settlement. Many historians still believe the colonists may have relocated there and lived among the Croatan people. Recent excavations on the island have uncovered small but intriguing clues. Archaeologists discovered English-style pottery fragments, metal objects, and tools dating back to the late 1500s. These items were found inside Native American village sites, suggesting that European settlers may have lived alongside local tribes. However, the evidence is not strong enough to prove the entire colony moved there. It could mean only a small group joined the tribe, while others traveled elsewhere. Another promising area of research comes from studying old maps drawn by John White, the colony's governor. When historians carefully examined one of his original maps, they discovered a hidden symbol beneath a paper patch. Under the patch appeared to be a small fort symbol, possibly marking a location where the settlers planned to build another colony. The discovery led archaeologists to investigate inland area of what is now North Carolina. At the site sometimes called Site X, researchers found fragments of English pottery from the late 16th century. These artifacts suggest that some colonists may have traveled inland instead of heading to the coast. If that theory is correct, the lost colony may not have disappeared in one single event. Instead, the settlers might have split into several groups, each trying to survive in a different way. Some may have joined Native American tribes, some may have attempted to build new settlements, and others may have struggled to survive in the unfamiliar wilderness. But even with modern technology, the new discoveries, no clear records have been found that explains exactly what had happened to every member of the colony. The fate of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, remains completely unknown, and the story of the lost colony continues to raise new questions every time researchers uncover another clue. Yet one final mystery remains. Why did the settlers leave only a single word behind? Was CROATOAN meant to guide rescuers to their new home? Or was it simply the last trace of a community that knew its future was uncertain? In the final part of this story, we'll explore the most intriguing question of all. What historians believe may have really happened to the settlers of the lost colony, and why their disappearance still captures our imagination today. Part 7. An ending that may never be solved. More than 4 centuries have passed since the mysterious disappearance known as the Roanoke Colony disappearance. Generations of historians, archaeologists, and storytellers have tried to solve the puzzle left behind on Roanoke Island. Yet the truth remains just out of reach. The settlers left behind only a few clues: dismantled buildings, an empty settlement, and one word carved into wood: CROATOAN. That single message has fueled countless theories about what may have happened after John White sailed back to England in 1587. Some historians believe the colonists likely to survive by joining the nearby CROATOAN tribe on what is now Hatteras Island. Archaeological discoveries of English-style tools and pottery in Native American villages support the possibility that the settlers blended into local communities. If that theory is true, the lost colony may not have been destroyed at all. Instead, it may have slowly transformed, its people adapting to a new way of life, adopting new traditions, and eventually becoming part of a different culture. Other experts believe the colony splits into multiple groups. Some may have traveled inland into the forests of North Carolina, attempting to establish a new settlement. Evidence found at inland archaeological sites suggests that English artifacts from the late 1500s appear far from the original colony. But there are still darker possibilities. The settlers may have faced starvation, disease, or conflict as they tried to survive without the supplies promised from England. Families traveling through unfamiliar wilderness would have faced enormous challenges. Without written records, it is impossible to know exactly how their story unfolded. Perhaps the most haunting part of this mystery is the personal side of it. When John White returned to Roanoke in 1590, he was not just searching for a colony, he was searching for his family, his daughter, and his granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. White never found them. He never discovered where they went, and he never learned their fate. That uncertainty turned the story of Roanoke into one of the most enduring mysteries in the early American history. Unlike many historical puzzles that are eventually solved through new discoveries or documents, this one may never have a clear answer. The settlers left no letters, no diaries, no confirmed records of their final journey, only a single carved word pointing toward an unknown destination. And maybe that is why the story continues to fascinate people today. Because the disappearance of settlers from Roanoke Island reminds us that history still holds secrets. Even in an age of technology and research, there are moments in the past that remain unfinished. So what do you think really happened? Did the settlers survive by joining the CROATOAN people? Did they build a new colony somewhere inland? Or did something else entirely happen during those 3 years long when no ships came from England? The answer may still be hidden somewhere along the coast of North Carolina, waiting for someone to uncover the final piece of the story. Part 8. The mystery that history never finished. The story of the Roanoke Colony Disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries in the early American history. More than 400 years have passed since the settlers vanished from Roanoke Island, and despite all the research, the final answer still hasn't been found. What makes this story so fascinating is how little evidence remains. There were no letters left behind, no clear records of where the colonists traveled, no confirmed graves or settlements that can be directly connected to every member of the colony. Just a quiet, abandoned settlement and a single word carved into wood, CROATOAN. Historians continue to debate what that word truly meant. It may have pointed towards Hatteras Island, where the friendly Croatan tribe lived. Archaeological discoveries there suggest that at least some English settlers may have lived alongside the Native American communities. If that theory is correct, the so-called Lost Colony might not have vanished at all. Its people may have simply adapted, blending into another culture and leaving behind their original identity. But there are still other possibilities. Some researchers believe the settlers may have moved inland, attempting to build a new settlement somewhere deeper within what is now North Carolina. Evidence from certain archaeological sites hints that English artifacts from the late 1500s appear far from the original colony. Others think that settlers might have split into several groups, each searching for safety, food, or allies in different directions. And of course, there are darker theories too. The wilderness was harsh and unpredictable. Without regular supplies from England, survival would have been incredibly difficult. Hunger, illness, or conflict may have slowly erased the colony without leaving clear traces behind. But the most powerful part of the mystery isn't just the disappearance itself. It's the human story behind it. When John White sailed away in 1587 to gather supplies, he believed he would return quickly. Instead, war in Europe delayed him for 3 years. By the time he returned, the colony had already vanished. White spent the rest of his life never knowing what happened to his daughter or his granddaughter, Virginia Dare. Imagine carrying that question for the rest of your life. Did they survive somewhere? Did they build a new home? Or did something happen before help could arrive? Even today, historians and archaeologists continue searching for new answers. New technology, new excavation, and new discoveries may one day reveal more and what happened to settlers of Roanoke. But it's also possible that the mystery will never be completely solved. Sometimes history lives behind stories that remain unfinished. Stories where the final chapter was never written. And maybe that's why the disappearance of the settlers from Roanoke Island continues to capture our imagination centuries later. Because the real question isn't just what happened to them, it's what you believe happened. Did the colonists start a new life among the CROATOAN people? Did they disappear into the wilderness of North Carolina? Or is there a completely different explanation that history has yet to uncover? The answer might still be out there, waiting beneath the soil, hidden in the forgotten records, or buried somewhere along the windswept coast where the lost colony once stood.